The shocking truth behind several recent New York Islanders signings has been revealed, and this has a lot of Islanders fans concerned, as it seems like the transition of power between the GMs was not as seamless as you would like to see in the National Hockey League. We're going to break that all down on this episode of Islanders Digest, but really quickly, before we get into that, we noticed that 76% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. If you're an Islander fan, you want more Islanders content just like this, what are you waiting for? Subscribe as we get closer and closer to hitting our goal of 1,000 subscribers before the NHL draft, where the Islanders still have the first overall pick. So be sure to subscribe to be a part of this Islanders community. Now let's get into what we're talking about in this video, which is the fact that Lou Lamoriello signed several contracts before he exited as the general manager of the New York Islanders. And the one that we were really focused on yesterday, and we're going to talk about at the end of this video, because I do think people are giving the Kyle Palmieri contract a lot more hate than it deserves. But the ones we were talking about yesterday were the Kyle Palmieri contract and the Adam Boqvist contract. But what we haven't talked about yet is the fact that apparently Lou Lamoriello also re-signed his son, Chris Lamoriello, and Steve Pellegrini as the assistant general managers of the New York Islanders. And this has a lot of fans really questioning what ownership was doing. And frankly, I completely understand if Lou Lamoriello was a general manager on the hot seat, as he clearly was because he was let go of at the end of the season, how are you letting him negotiate extensions for his son and Steve Pellegrini? And frankly, how can ownership really allow Lamoriello to extend his son? Clearly, this is something that ownership had to approve because it's their money. It just does not make sense how this was allowed to happen. And now there are definitely questions in what the aftermath is going to look like now that Lou Lamoriello is gone. And Stefan Rosner has confirmed that from what he is told, Lou Lamoriello will not be a part of the New York Islanders organization moving forward once his contract ends. I believe that is July 1st, the same time that other free agents ends. We'll have to wait and see if Lou Lamoriello is going to be involved at all when it comes to the draft table, things like that, especially considering the transition of power. Don't be shocked if that happens. I don't think he'll be there, but there is a chance that he is sitting at that table for the New York Islanders on the Zoom call, because unfortunately the NHL draft is not going to be in person this year. I think they're going to change that in the future, though, because Gary Bettman is already not happy that they didn't. And why shouldn't? The centralized draft was one of the greatest parts of the NHL draft. But anyway, getting off topic here. Lou Lamoriello will not be returning, but the damage he left on his franchise is still being felt to this day, as we haven't even seen Mathieu Darche make a move, and we're still getting Lou Lamoriello contracts announced, including, again, what we talked about with Chris Lamoriello. And I do want to say, when it comes to Chris Lamoriello, this does not mean he is returning. I can already see fans absolutely panicking, mostly because of the terrible job Chris Lamoriello did with the AHL franchise for the Islanders and the Bridgeport Islanders. And I do want to say, just because he was signed to a contract does not mean he cannot still be fired by Mathieu Darche. More importantly, it also does not mean he's necessarily coming back as an assistant GM in charge of the Bridgeport team as well, even if he does come back. Now, Rosner did note that while Pellegrini was at Mathieu Darche's introductory presser, Chris Lamoriello was not, and you can read into that whatever you want. I don't necessarily think this means that Chris Lamoriello is out. That's a decision that Mathieu Darche is going to have to make. And I think regardless on whether he keeps one of these assistant GMs or both, I still think Mathieu Darche is going to bring his own person in. And that's something you have to keep in mind. Most other teams in the NHL do have more assistant general managers than the Islanders do. Lou Lamoriello like to keep a small, tidy ship, and we're yet to see what Mathieu Darche is going to want to do. But I do want to make it clear that just because Lou Lamoriello signed these contracts, while it might cost ownership a little more money, while ownership is definitely going to owe Chris Lamoriello that money, that doesn't mean he has to continue his role with the Islanders. And we'll have to see what Mathieu Darche decides with him. And let me know in the comments what you think about the potential that Chris Lamoriello can stick around, especially considering that he has a contract extension. I personally do not want him anywhere around this team, but frankly, as long as he's no longer in charge of the Bridgeport team and we have a new general manager for the minor leagues, then I don't really care so much if he still is around in an advisor type role where he doesn't really have any impact hands-on when it comes to the team. I don't think that would be the worst, although I just kind of would like to have a new voice in there. But I'd love to know your thoughts on this in the comments below, because I know there are a lot of strong feelings when it comes to Chris Lamoriello. And again, just the fact that his father was able to sign him an extension for the Islanders when he himself did not have job security is really questionable for the New York Islanders owners. I will say though, as much criticism as the Islanders owners do deserve for this situation where Lou Lamoriello was able to give out contracts before getting let go of, that's over with. Like, the one thing that is encouraging about the situation is Mathieu Darche is now in control, and as the Islanders owners have shown in the past, once they have a new general manager in place, they take a step back. So I don't expect ownership to really be meddling in the future. And because of that, while this is concerning, it's something we can put behind us. We accept that Kyle Palmieri is going to be a part of the Islanders, accept that Boqvist is going to be a part of the Islanders, accept that Chris Lamoriello got a contract, but from now on, they're now in Darche's hands, which at least, while these decisions are not too encouraging, they're decisions from the past that will no longer be happening in the future. Which really brings us to this Kyle Palmieri contract. I was really shocked in yesterday's video with how negative the responses were to Kyle Palmieri return to the Islanders. I understand he's not perfect, he's an older player, but this is a player who took a big discount really to be with the Islanders, especially when you consider that he's taking less money in his new contract than he did in his previous contract, despite the fact that his numbers didn't really fall off. And in addition, the salary cap has gone up significantly since he signed that previous contract. So he's taking an even smaller percentage of the cap for the 20 plus goals that he provides. This is a good deal. And what Anders Lee says is you can't just replace somebody like Kyle Palmieri out of thin air. And I agree with this. Kyle Palmieri scores goals. This is a team that needs to score more goals, not less. Frankly, I don't think the Islanders can really put up a product next season that provides less goals and expect any fans to show up. So because of this, I really don't see the issue with Kyle Palmieri coming back. Again, it'd be different if there were a bunch of young players in Bridgeport ready to step up. That is not the case. As we've seen with the disaster that was the Bridgeport Islanders, no one is really ready to step up onto this team except for Callum Ritchie from the OHL. And even then, he's a center. We're going to need wingers that score goals, and Palmieri does that for a discounted price compared to what these free agents are going to cost in just a few weeks when we hit July 1st. Just you wait and see how expensive some of these contracts are going to be. It's going to be absolutely absurd. And hopefully the Islanders, now that they have Kyle Palmieri back, they don't feel the need to go in and overpay for a scorer. Now, the big concern when it comes to the Kyle Palmieri contract is that the first concern is that he's not going to age well. And just based on his stat chart over the past few seasons, it seems like Kyle Palmieri is still playing some pretty good, well-rounded hockey in terms of the value he provides. Yes, he is not going to be the best defensive player. That is evidently clear. But with his projected WAR being a 75%, this is a player who does a lot more good than he does bad. And for that price, you really can't complain about this contract. Now, what a lot of people are complaining about is the trade restriction in the terms that Kyle Palmieri cannot be traded at all in the first year of this contract. He has a full no trade clause, and then year 2 he has a 16-team no trade clause. And I do want to point something out because a lot of people are really complaining about that no trade clause in the first year. You were never going to trade Kyle Palmieri in the first year of this contract. This is a player who is returning to your team, so you already know what he provides. If you traded him a few months after he signed this contract, like say they trade him 3 months into the season, it would look absolutely terrible for the Islanders, and frankly would not help the Islanders at all when it comes to attracting free agents in the future, which is something that Darche definitely has to consider. But more importantly, everyone is complaining about how he has no trade protection in the first 2 seasons, in the 2 years of this contract. The first year, again, you were going to trade him. And in the second year, while there is a 16-team no trade clause, there are a lot of teams that the Islanders can move Kyle Palmieri to in the second year of this contract, especially when you consider that 16 teams make the playoffs. Basically, what the second year of this contract is basically ensuring is that if the Islanders move Kyle Palmieri in the future, it will be to a playoff contender. Say they sell in the deadline 2 seasons from now. That's just helping Kyle Palmieri go to the team he wants to go to if he wants to win the cup. And frankly, this is the exact same trade protection that Brock Nelson had. And the Islanders had no problem getting an absolute haul for Brock Nelson. I'm not saying the Islanders are going to get a haul for Kyle Palmieri, or I'm not even saying they should trade Kyle Palmieri, because honestly, the ideal situation with this contract is by year 2, the Islanders are kind of getting closer to getting back to contending and making steps back in the right direction. And hopefully in 2 seasons, the Islanders aren't going to be in a position to sell at the deadline. I think they're going to be in a position to sell in the deadline this season, but by next season, you're probably not wishing the Islanders are adding, because they're going to still be a young core. Hopefully they're getting closer to making the playoffs, if not in a playoff spot in 2 seasons. So because of that, I see no issue with this contract. It's not like it is unmovable if you absolutely have to next season. Sure, you can complain that you're not going to have as much money this season, but again, what was there to spend on this season in the offseason? That's my big question to people who don't like this contract. Who would you want the Islanders to spend on? And it's a valid question. Do you really like Brock Boeser or Nikolai Ehlers or Mitch Marner, which probably was not going to happen anyway? I'm just curious to know the thought process on why there's so much negativity towards this contract. This is a player who's from the hometown area and really took a discount to stay. And I think that's something that a lot of fans are not being appreciative enough of when it comes to Kyle Palmieri. Is he a perfect player? No. But you're not paying him to be a perfect player. You're paying him under $5 million to score 20 goals. And I think there's a pretty good bet he scores 20 goals in both these seasons. And if he takes a step back, yes, that's going to make this contract look a little bit worse. But again, it's only 2 years. It's not like you're giving one of these guys in free agency a 7-year contract, and year 2 they look absolutely abysmal. These no trade clauses are definitely more of a concern when it comes to signing a guy for 6 or 7 years. Something like Pierre Engvall, which is an absolute disaster. When it comes to Kyle Palmieri, 2 years of trade protection for a guy who's a veteran like that, who's taking a hometown discount, not only is it standard, but it makes sense, and it's really not a big deal, especially when you consider a lot of people are complaining, oh, like they want like the new regime to stop with the trade protection. Well, again, Mathieu Darche did not sign this contract. I think we could have a lot more concerns if Mathieu Darche was also giving out, if it was Mathieu Darche signed contract and he gave a bunch of trade protection, just because we want to see the new regime be more hesitant to hand out those no trade clauses and those movement clauses such as that. But this contract was not signed by Mathieu Darche. He accepted it, that it was a contract that Lou signed, and he honored it, but he didn't sign it. So I don't really see the concern with the no movement clause. Let me know. Again, maybe I'm missing something, so let me know in the comments below. I love to have hockey discussions in there with you guys, as always. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be one of our first 1,000 subscribers. My name is Patrick Nilan. This is Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.